The silver spoon fell like a small comet, bright, silent, and headed for the dark. It slipped from the edge of a white napkin and rolled across the marble floor of the five-star dining room, glinting once beneath the chandelier's light before vanishing under the tablecloth. The sound was soft but final, like a coin dropped into water. Conversations hesitated. Then laughter resumed, measured, expensive, practiced. At the head of the table sat Richard Halden, the man who owned half of downtown Manhattan and most of the silence inside this room. His watch gleamed, his voice carried, and his smile looked rehearsed to the decimal. Across from him sat 5 investors, each one eager to believe they were in the presence of genius. He raised a crystal glass. "To progress," he said. "To profit," they replied, while the toast echoed far from this golden room. 2 girls lay in a private hospital suite. Grace and Evelyn Halden, 17, identical, fragile as the light through the blinds. Machines kept rhythm beside their beds, soft beeps like half-finished prayers. Doctors whispered words that sounded scientific but meant we don't know. The girl's father had paid for the best of everything, yet even wealth could not silence the truth pulsing under his empire. The experimental drug that once promised a cure might instead have caused the disease. Back in the restaurant, Lena Carter, a waitress in a pressed black uniform, approached the table with quiet precision. Her shoes squeaked faintly on the marble, one of the few sounds not bought by money. She balanced a silver tray with steady hands, though her heartbeat felt unsteady in her chest. She had served men like Halden before, men who didn't see her, who thanked her with eyes that never looked down. She reminded herself of her mother's words, "Keep your dignity, baby. They can't tax what they can't see." Lena leaned to replace a napkin and the spoon slipped. The smallest accident. Yet in this room, small things had weight. She crouched to retrieve it, the linen brushing her shoulder. Under the long white tablecloth, the air smelled of perfume and truffle oil. The world above stayed bright and loud. Below it was muted, secret. The spoon had rolled to the table leg right beside a strip of tape. Beneath it, a folded note clung to the wood, yellow paper against polished darkness. It looked like something hidden, not dropped. Lena froze. A waiter wasn't supposed to see things, especially not things meant to stay unseen. She glanced upward, men laughing, glasses touching. No one noticed her absence. Her fingers brushed the tape. One corner of the paper came loose. On impulse, she peeled it away. Inside the fold, written in dark ink, was a single line and a signature. "The truth is rotting in your vaults. 1 week." Jonas Lena didn't know the name, but she knew the tone. Someone afraid. Someone urgent. Her first thought, it's for him. Her second, but why would it be taped down here? Her pulse climbed into her ears. She slipped the note into her sleeve, smoothed her apron, and rose, spoon in hand. When she returned it to Halden's table, her face was calm, her eyes steady. "Apologies, sir," she said quietly. Halden nodded without looking up. No harm done, but harm had already begun. As she stepped away, Lena's fingers closed around the note. Something in her, part curiosity, part defiance, knew she wouldn't hand it over. She looked once more at the man laughing under the chandeliers, at his perfect posture, his perfect glass. Somewhere out there, his daughters were dying. And though Lena didn't know it yet, the message under his table was not meant for the billionaire at all. It was meant for her. The night after the spoon fell, the city glowed like a circuit board, bright, alive, and indifferent. Lena Carter sat at a diner booth long after closing, the yellow note flattened beside her cup of black coffee. The ink had bled slightly from her sweaty hands, but the message stayed sharp. "The truth is rotting in your vaults." 1 week. Beneath the words, a faint mark showed through. A series of faded dots and slashes. Code, maybe, or a name erased. She told herself to forget it. Waitresses didn't chase corporate secrets. But curiosity was a quiet hunger, and Lena had been starving for fairness her whole life. Her phone screen glowed in the dark. She typed Halden Industries scandals into the search bar. The results loaded like buried bones rising through. Sent Halden Industries accused of falsifying environmental data. Former chemists questioned safety trials. Companies' new drug shows. Promise, but early tests sealed. Each headline opened a window into something rotten. Beneath the glamour of Richard Halden's empire, there were lawsuits settled quietly. Towns paid to stay silent. Workers dismissed for security violations. Lena clicked deeper. A research paper, removed from its original site but saved in an archive, described an experimental additive used in a medical trial 5 years earlier. The name of the product blurred into jargon, but one detail stopped her. Compound 9B tested on pediatric patients. Withdrawn after unexplained immune collapse. Pediatric. Children. Her breath hitched. She scrolled faster. One patient's family name had been redacted. Every letter except the first. H. Halden. The silver spoon flashed in her mind again. Its crest. Its polish, its lie. Outside, rain began tapping the window. Inside, the diner clock ticked like a metronome of conscience. She remembered her mother coughing through her last weeks, the insurance claim denied because the data was incomplete. Different names, same story. The powerful protect the lie. The rest pay the price. Lena went back to the note. She tilted it under the neon light and noticed tiny marks printed along the bottom edge. They weren't random. They formed a faint string, a Jonas encrypted mail.net. A name, a signal, a way in. She felt a chill that wasn't from the air. Whoever A. Jonas was, they had tried to warn someone. Maybe Halden himself. Maybe anyone who would listen. But the message had been hidden where no one of power would ever look. Under the table, at the feet of the invisible. Lena's fingers hovered over her phone keyboard. A message formed slowly, careful like a confession. I found your note. Who are you? What do you mean, 1 week? She didn't press send, not yet. She stared at the city beyond the glass. Streets wet and shining. Towers blinking like watchful eyes. Halden Industries stood somewhere among those towers. A monument built on money and fear. But every monument, she thought, had a crack somewhere. She looked again at the email address, her reflection faint on the screen. Then, with one breath and no turning back, she sent the message. The first message came at 2:14 a.m., a single line that glowed cold on Lena's phone screen. You shouldn't have found the note, but now you can't unknow it. No greeting, no name, only the faint signature at the bottom. A. Jonas. Lena sat on her small apartment bed, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of detergent and old fear. The city outside whispered through thin windows, sirens, traffic, and the hum of lights that never went out. On her phone, the words blinked again, waiting. She typed back. I need to understand. What truth were you hiding from Halden? Minutes passed. Then another reply. Not hiding. Exposing. Before they erased me. The air in her apartment seemed to shrink. Erased. She pictured a man somewhere in the dark, typing from a borrowed computer, afraid of every sound. A ghost, alive only in the wires. Jonas wrote again. The twins are sick because of 9B. It was an additive meant to boost immune response. They skipped testing to save time. It contaminated the batch. Children died. Others still will. Lena stared at the words until they blurred. She didn't know science, but she knew cruelty disguised as efficiency. She thought of her mother. The memory came like a door creaking open. A small apartment that always smelled faintly of menthol rub and coffee. Her mother coughing softly, a smile painted over pain. Bills stacked like walls. The letter from the insurance company, the one that said her treatment wasn't approved for coverage. That night her mother had whispered, Baby, when they don't see you, they don't owe you. Now years. Later, a man who wasn't supposed to exist was telling Lena the same truth, through code and fear. She typed back, her fingers trembling. Why would Halden risk his own daughters? The screen stayed blank for a full minute. Then, he didn't know. The additive went global under a subsidiary name. His board buried the warnings. Lena scrolled. Back, rereading each message, her heartbeat sinking with the blue flashes on the screen. Somewhere inside the web of power and money, a mistake had poisoned not just strangers but the billionaire's own bloodline. Her next question came out as a whisper before it became text. Can you prove it? A pause. Then a message longer than the rest. Yes, I have files, lab reports, signatures, timestamps, but they're encrypted in my cloud drive. I'm trying to move them before they trace me. The next bubble appeared halfway typed, then stopped. Nothing. Lena waited. 1 minute. 3. 5. The cursor blinked like a dying heartbeat. Then the chat window vanished, account deleted. She tried again. Message failed. The silence in her apartment deepened. She could hear the refrigerator click on, then off. Her phone screen went black. Something told her Jonas hadn't simply signed off. Lena crossed to the window and peeked through the curtain. Across the street, a black sedan idled beneath a flickering streetlight. The driver's face was hidden, the engine running but the car unmoving. Her chest tightened. She stepped back, lights off now. Phone clutched like evidence. For a long time she stood in the half-dark, listening. The silence had a pulse. On her desk lay the silver spoon from the restaurant, the one she had slipped into her apron pocket without thinking. Its surface caught the faint city glow, half reflecting her face. For the first time she understood its meaning. The spoon wasn't just a symbol of wealth anymore. It was a mirror, showing who was willing to see and who was content to shine. Outside, the sedan pulled away slowly, disappearing into the rain. Lena whispered to the empty room, "You can erase a man, but not a message." And though she didn't yet know it, someone was already erasing her trail. The hospital room looked more like a museum than a place for healing. White walls, silver machines, silence polished to a shine. Grace Halden sat propped against her pillow, pale but alert, while her twin, Evelyn, adjusted the camera on a bedside stand. The red recording light blinked, a small pulse of truth in a room ruled by control. "Ready?" Evelyn asked softly. Grace nodded. "Let's just say it plain." The two sisters faced the lens. They were 17, mirror images except for a faint scar above Evelyn's eyebrow, a souvenir from a childhood game. They smiled the way people do when they don't want to cry. Grace began, her voice steady but small. "If you're watching this, it means we didn't make it. Please don't blame the doctors. They tried. Just look deeper." Evelyn took over. "Our dad doesn't know we're recording. He thinks money can fix everything. But you can't buy clean air or conscience." They paused, unsure what else to confess. The machines beside them hummed like patient witnesses. On the tray between their beds lay a small, old silver spoon, its handle bent from years of childish play. They'd once fought over it at tea parties, pretending to serve invisible guests. Now they passed it back and forth like a charm against fear. Evelyn held it up to the camera. "He gave us this when we were 6, she said. Said it meant we'd never go hungry." Grace smiled faintly. I guess hunger takes different forms. Behind their humor was something quieter, grief not just for their illness, but for the father they still wanted to believe in. A nurse entered, checking monitors. She moved, carefully, the way people do when carrying both science and sympathy. Her badge read Nurse Patel. She adjusted an IV, then lingered longer than usual, her expression unreadable. "How are we today, girls?" she asked. "Filming our goodbye," Evelyn said gently. The nurse looked at the blinking camera light, then at the spoon gleaming between them. Her eyes softened. "That's a pretty piece. Family heirloom?" Grace nodded. "From when things were simple." For a moment, silence pressed on all three of them, the kind that feels heavier than sound. Then Nurse Patel leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Someone out there is trying to help you," she whispered. The sisters blinked. "Who?" Evelyn asked, but the nurse only smiled faintly, as if she had said too much. "Rest now," she murmured, straightening the blanket, "and keep that spoon safe." When she left, the room seemed smaller, but not quite as cold. The sisters looked at each other, half afraid, half alive again. Grace picked up the spoon and turned it in her hand, the metal catching the light like a secret signal. "Maybe," she said. "Someone finally sees us." Evelyn reached for her sister's hand. "Then we hold on." The camera light blinked once more before the recording ended, one red dot glowing against the white silence, waiting for whoever would find it next. The knock on Lena's door came like a verdict, firm, practiced, and early. She froze halfway through her morning coffee. Through the peephole stood two men in gray suits, identical down to the polished shoes. Corporate security had a look, clean, calm, and unreadable. When she opened the door, they smiled the way people do when the outcome is already decided. "Ms. Carter," the taller one said. "We represent Halden Industries' compliance division. Just a few questions." Lena stepped aside, the air between them sharp with quiet threat. The men didn't sit. They loomed. "You were working at the Crescent the night Mr. Halden dined with investors?" "Yes." "You found something under his table?" "I cleaned tables," she said flatly. The shorter one slid a folder across her counter. Inside was a photograph of the silver spoon, her spoon, and a printed copy of the message she had sent to A. Jonas. Her pulse stuttered. The taller man spoke again, voice smooth as glass. "A private contractor traced a security breach connected to your device. A misunderstanding, we're sure, but these things can look serious." Lena held his gaze. "You think I stole something?" "We think you're scared," he replied. "And we think fear can be managed." He placed a white envelope on the table, thick, weighted money. "Take this. Delete what you found. No one will ever mention your name again." For a moment, the room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. She looked at the envelope, then at their hands, steady, professional, empty of conscience. She thought of her mother's voice. "Silence is how they win, baby." Her fingers brushed the envelope, not to take it, but to slide it back. "I don't want your money," she said quietly. Both men smiled again, smaller this time. "Think carefully, Miss Carter. People disappear for less." Then they left. Across town, inside a glass tower, Richard Halden stood before his board of directors. The morning sun burned against the windows, but the room felt cold. "The media sniffed around again," said his legal counsel. "We'll launch an internal review. Controlled, confidential, reassuring to shareholders." Halden nodded. He didn't ask what the review would find. He already knew what it was built to bury. The words "containment strategy" appeared on the meeting slides in calm blue letters. Every man in the room understood what it meant. Truth managed into silence. Still, Richard's reflection in the window wavered, an outline of a man who had everything but peace. That night, Lena sat in a cheap motel miles from her apartment. The blinds were closed, the room light low. She'd taken a bus without a clear plan, just distance. On her laptop, the folder from A. Jonas finally opened. Files bloomed across the screen. Lab results, falsified safety reports. Internal emails marked confidential. Dates, names, signatures, proof. She thought of Grace and Evelyn Halden lying in that hospital, the silver spoon on their tray. She thought of the nurse's whisper, "Someone out there is trying to help you." The cost of silence, she realized, wasn't measured in money. It was measured in lives. Lena opened a new email and attached the files. The recipient, an investigative journalist known for tearing down giants. In the message field, she typed only 3 words. "The truth rots." Her cursor hovered over send. Then she clicked. The laptop light dimmed. The bus station across the street flickered through the window. Somewhere an engine started. By morning, Lena's room was empty. The maid found the envelope of hush money still unopened on the table, its seal unbroken, its silence rejected. The news broke first as a whisper, then as a storm. Halden Industries under investigation. Possible link between a failed trial and multiple child illnesses. The headlines were cautious, polite. But the world had begun to turn its gaze toward Richard Halden, and this time, it was not in admiration. Inside the private hospital suite, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and hope thinning by the hour. Grace and Evelyn lay still under pale sheets, their breaths shallow and uneven. Machines blinked in rhythm, steady, fragile, merciless. Their father stood at the foot of the bed, tie loosened, eyes fixed on the floor tiles as if truth were hidden there. He had built towers of glass and concrete that carried his name in gold. Yet here, surrounded by sterile white, his empire could buy only time and not much of it. He told himself it was unfair, that he had trusted others, that the company was too vast for one man to know every file, every formula. But guilt has a voice that never tires, and it spoke to him now. He remembered another room decades earlier, A small kitchen with cracked tiles and the smell of old coffee. His mother counting coins by candlelight. The fridge humming like a patient reminder of hunger. "You have to make them listen, Richard," she'd said. "People like us, no one saves us. You build or you beg," he had built. He had sworn never to return to that smallness, never to feel powerless again, and he had kept that promise. Until now. A nurse entered quietly and adjusted the twins' IV lines. "Their numbers are dropping," she said. "We're doing everything we can." Richard nodded, but her words felt far away, like dialogue from a film he wasn't part of. He turned toward the window where reporters' cameras flashed in the distance below. Each burst of light felt like a question he couldn't answer. His phone buzzed on the bedside table, messages from board members, lawyers, and publicists. All urgent, all empty. He ignored them. Then another notification appeared, different from the rest. Unknown sender, video file attached. He hesitated before opening it. The screen lit up with a grainy image of a woman sitting in a dim motel room. Her face was tired but steady. "Lena Carter." Her voice came calm, deliberate. "If you're watching this, Mr. Halden, it means the truth is already out. The files have been sent to every major network. I didn't do it to ruin you. I did it to save them." The camera shifted slightly, revealing a table with stacks of documents, lab reports, trial data, the same files he had once signed without reading. "Your company knew the risk," she continued. "They called it a cost of progress. But people are not costs. Not your workers, not your daughters." Richard's breath caught. The world in the video felt smaller than his, but more real. He could see a silver spoon glinting beside Lena's coffee cup, the same crest he'd once ordered for a child's birthday tea set. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Lena said. "Just for truth. Before it takes anyone else." The video ended. The screen went dark. Richard's reflection stared back at him, aged, shaken, stripped of certainty. For the first time, he saw not a titan of industry, but a man cornered by the thing he'd built to protect himself. He looked toward his daughters. Evelyn stirred faintly, eyes half open. Grace's hand twitched toward the spoon on her tray, her fingers barely brushing it. Richard's throat tightened. The object he'd once given them as a symbol of privilege now lay beside them like an unspoken verdict. He sank into the chair between their beds, phone still in hand, and whispered to the quiet machines, "If she's right, then all this time, I've been feeding them poison." The monitors beeped steadily, indifferent to confession, and on the black screen of his phone, the last frame of Lena's face lingered, unmoving, unafraid. It began with sirens slicing through the dawn. Federal agents moved through the glass doors of Halden Industries like a tide of consequence. Black jackets, clipped voices, boxes labeled evidence. The building's polished floors reflected their purpose. Clean, cold, unstoppable. Inside, employees stood frozen beside cubicles, holding their badges as if those thin cards could still mean safety. The company that once promised innovation without limits now echoed with the sound of drawers opening and secrets leaving. Richard Halden watched from his office on the top floor. The skyline that had once looked like triumph now felt like judgment. Every tower outside seemed to lean toward him, listening. "Sir," said his chief legal officer, pale and trembling, "the board has voted to suspend you effective immediately. We'll cooperate fully." Halden barely heard her. His gaze locked on the digital screen mounted to the wall. News networks ran the same headline. Halden Industries raided. New evidence from insider source. Then a video began streaming across every feed. It was Lena Carter. She sat at a kitchen table. Plain light on her face, voice calm and deliberate. "My name is Lena Carter. I was a waitress the night the message was found. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I only wanted the truth seen. The documents you'll read prove Halden Industries hid data that could have saved lives, including the CEO's own daughters." She paused, eyes steady. "I'm not a scientist. I'm just someone who got tired of serving silence." The video spread like fire. By midday, the streets below his penthouse filled with noise, protesters holding signs, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing in waves. From above, the crowd looked like an ocean made of anger and grief. Some carried photos of sick children. Others held spoons, cheap metal ones raised like symbols. A young woman stood near the front, holding a sign painted in bold red. "No one eats off lies forever." Attached to her sign was a single silver spoon, taped at the handle. It gleamed against the gray sky, the same way the one from his daughter's childhood once had. Holden turned from the window. He couldn't bear the chant rising from below. Grace and Evelyn. Grace and Evelyn. The sound struck harder than any lawsuit could. In another room, his phone vibrated against the desk. He didn't answer at first. Then he saw the name, Dr. Avery, hospital. He picked up. His voice came out rough, almost unfamiliar. "Yes? Mr. Holden," said the doctor gently. "We're seeing signs of organ failure. But there's an emergency therapy, one based on the original data from Compound 9B. It could work, but we need everything. Every internal record, every suppressed report." Holden closed his eyes. "All of it?" he asked. "Every detail," the doctor said. "If you tell the truth now, we might still save them." Silence filled the line. Through the window, the crowd kept chanting his daughter's names. Below their voices came the faint rhythm of metal spoons striking against the barricades. Clink, 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 a sound too human to ignore. He walked to his desk and opened a locked drawer. Inside were two things: a folder marked Confidential Project 9B, and the silver spoon he had kept from their tea set. It had sat there for years untouched, a reminder of comfort, now turned symbol of guilt. He held it for a long moment, then looked back toward the city, the place he'd once sworn he'd never bow to. The chant rose again. Grace and Evelyn. Finally, he whispered almost to himself, "Then let it all come out." He reached for the phone. The cameras blinked like judgment. Richard Holden stood behind a podium in the company's press room. Every light fixed on him, every eye waiting to see whether the great man would speak or lie again. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded a paper, though the words on it had already burned into his mind. Outside, the world was watching. On screens, in streets, in hospital waiting rooms where his daughters hovered between breath and silence. He began quietly. "My name is Richard Holden," he said, the words heavier than they looked. "For years I believed progress meant speed. I believed results mattered more than truth. That belief destroyed lives, including the lives of my own children." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Reporters leaned forward. He looked straight into the cameras now. "The drug known as Compound 9B was pushed through testing despite warnings from our internal scientists. Those warnings were buried by me. I authorized the deletions. I silenced the whistleblowers. And now my daughters are dying because of the very system I created." Flashbulbs flared. His voice wavered, but he didn't stop. "Documents and research recovered by an employee, Lena Carter, have been handed to federal authorities. That evidence includes the data needed to reverse the damage caused by the compound. If any good remains to be done, it will be because she refused my silence." Somewhere deep inside, the sound of his name, once currency, now felt like a sentence. He lowered the paper. "I will resign effective immediately. I take full responsibility, and I beg forgiveness, not from shareholders or the public, but from two girls in a hospital room who still carry my name." The room went still. Then a single camera shutter clicked like a gavel. That night, rain stitched silver lines across the city. Holden walked through it, hatless, anonymous now. The Holden Tower behind him was dark, its name already being removed from the front by workers in ponchos. At the hospital, security nodded silently as he entered. News of his confession had already reached every floor. Some nurses turned away when they saw him. Others simply watched, pity hiding behind professionalism. Grace and Evelyn's room was dim except for the soft blue light of machines. They were pale, thin but alive. The new treatment, developed from Lena's uncovered research, had begun that morning. The doctor said there was a chance now, a small one but real. He stood at the doorway for a long time before stepping closer. Evelyn stirred first, whispering, "Dad?" Her voice was thin, but her eyes opened. Grace followed, a faint smile crossing her lips. "We saw you," she said. "On TV," he swallowed hard. "Then you know," Grace nodded. "You told the truth." There was no anger in her voice, only exhaustion and something that almost sounded like relief. He pulled a small object from his coat pocket, a silver spoon, tarnished from years in a drawer. He placed it gently on the tray between their beds. "When you were little," he said softly, "I told you this meant you'd never go hungry. I was wrong. Means something else now." Evelyn blinked. "What does it mean?" "That the things we hold onto can still be used for good," he said. Neither daughter spoke. The steady beeping of monitors filled the silence like a slow heartbeat returning. He brushed their hands once, hesitant, reverent, then turned toward the door. Outside, rain struck the hospital windows harder, a rhythm without melody. He stepped through the sliding doors and into it. No umbrella, no chauffeur, no security. For the first time, he felt the weight lift, not gone, but shared with the world he had finally stopped hiding from. Behind him, in the quiet hospital room, the silver spoon caught a single ray of light and shone. The city looked different after the rain, cleaner, quieter, as if it had finally exhaled. Months had passed since the fall of Halden Industries. The headlines had faded, the courtrooms emptied, and the world had moved on. But for those who had lived inside the story, the echoes remained, soft, steady, and unforgettable. In a small brick building on the east side, Lena Carter adjusted her name tag. Read simply, Volunteer Community Health Clinic. The air smelled of sanitizer and hope. She moved from patient to patient with calm assurance, her voice gentle but firm. There were no cameras now, no shadows waiting outside her window. Her life was small again but honest. She liked it that way. A child tugged on her sleeve, offering a lopsided paper flower colored in crayon. "For helping," the girl said. Lena smiled. "Then I'll keep it where I can see it." Across town, sunlight poured through the glass lobby of a new building, the Carter Foundation for Medical Truth. On the front wall hung a simple plaque, named in honor of Eleanor Carter, whose faith in fairness never expired. Inside, Grace and Evelyn Halden stood side by side, thinner but stronger. Their father's empire was gone, replaced by something quieter and more lasting, a mission built from what nearly destroyed them. Grace spoke at the podium. "Our family once believed success was measured by what you build, but now we know it's measured by what you repair." Evelyn added, "Transparency isn't revenge, it's redemption." The audience applauded softly, some with tears they didn't hide. Cameras clicked again, but this time the light felt clean. Later that evening, Lena watched the coverage on a small TV at the clinic. She saw the twins unveil a sculpture in the lobby, a single silver spoon balanced on a beam of glass. Beneath it, an inscription read, "From luxury to legacy, truth feeds us all." She turned off the screen and sat in the quiet. The storm that had once surrounded her had passed, but its lessons stayed. Truth, she thought, was never the loudest voice in the room, only the one that refused to die. As the broadcast ended, the news anchor's final line lingered like a benediction. "Truth can't heal the dead, but it can save the living." It began with a sound so small no one noticed, a spoon striking marble. Yet that single fall cracked open an empire built on silence. The story of Richard Halden, his daughters, and a waitress named Lena Carter became more than news. It became a mirror. Around the world, people began asking what else was hidden beneath the polished tables of power. Governments passed laws for medical transparency. Former employees of other corporations stepped forward, their voices no longer trembling. Whistleblower hotlines filled. Each truth, once buried, rose like light under a closed door. And still, the symbol that lingered most wasn't the skyscrapers seized or the fortune lost. It was the silver spoon. In classrooms, teachers held it up as a lesson in ethics. In small museums, one sat behind glass labeled Artifact of Conscience. It wasn't gold or diamond, just ordinary metal, but people stopped to stare. Some saw guilt, others saw grace. For the Halden twins, it remained a reminder of survival. For Lena, it meant something else entirely, a proof that even the smallest act of courage can split the darkness. She never sought fame, yet her name became shorthand for accountability, whispered in boardrooms that once feared no one. The world didn't change overnight. Power still tempted, greed still disguised itself as progress, but somewhere in every negotiation, in every signed contract, someone would think of that spoon, how it fell, how it rolled, how it refused to stay where it was placed. It reminded them that justice is rarely grand. It's quiet. It begins with the person who chooses not to look away, the waitress. The daughters, the billionaire, each had played a part in the same equation of guilt and redemption. From their collision came a truth as old as humanity itself, that integrity doesn't belong to the rich or the poor. It belongs to whoever dares to keep it alive. Years later, the silver spoon still gleamed under glass. Its surface carried faint scratches, fingerprints that no one could erase. When the light hit it just right, it reflected not wealth or power, but something simpler, faces leaning close, searching for themselves. And in that polished curve of silver, the world finally saw itself, flawed, redeemed, and human.